Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another session of the Marketing Now book launch mega live stream. So this particular one, we're focusing in on part 2 of the book, and in specifically the tips within that section of the book. So we've got a few wonderful guests here. And one of them not quite on screen yet. So Phil, I know you can hear me now. So Phil, there was one extra guest. So what we're going to have to do is just rotate the guests. So we've got Julia, Steve, Amy, and Phil as guests. So Phil, what we're going to do is as soon as Amy's finished her first tip, then she's going to leave the screen and you're going to come on and share your tip then as well. So Phil Palin going, I love Amy Woods. There you go, Amy. Full of love for you already. So we'll get going with the introductions just in a second. There, I've just got to fiddle with a couple of things here and move on to my next stage in the notes. But it's great to have everyone here. Will going neat in the chat there. Amy going, I love you too, Phil. Hopefully that's
all going on.
where it ends. Yes. Yeah, thanks again for everyone coming back there. We've had some incredible content so far. So in terms of this session, who's taking part? Amy Woods, Julia Bramble, Phil Palin, and Steve Linney. So we'll do a proper introduction just now. So Amy, she is an expert. That's Amy Wood. She's an expert at content repurposing. She's also the founder of Content 10x, and you can find her over at content10x.com. So, Amy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and congrats on the book, of course.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also with us is Julia. Julia Bramble writes for Social Media Examiner and isn't a fan of yucky marketing. You can also find her over at bramblebuzz.co.uk. Hi, Julia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, well done on the book. Amazing.
Thank you very much. Also on is Steve Linney. Now, that's I was actually going to introduce Phil next, but Phil's not quite with us here at the moment. So I'll say that Steve Linney is a Scottish tech nerd based in Brighton. I don't know why I couldn't say Scottish there.
Yeah,
considering I'm a Scot.
Been away for too long.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah, so I remember having conversation with you on a webinar once, Steve, and we were reciting 11. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. I knew you were going to say that. It's definitely, if you're Scottish, you'll know what we're talking about. If you're English, not so much.
Anyway, Steve's a blogger at Making Dad Sense, and he's also a marketer for Informer HQ. You can find him over at stevelinney.com. So thanks so much for joining us as well.
That's okay. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure as always.
Superb. Well, you'll introduce Phil just in a second when he comes on, but let's get back to Amy. Amy, so we're looking in at the second part of Marketing Now, the book. So we've got a good probably 30 or 40 tips in that section there. Which one of them jumped out at you as being something that you want to be focusing in on?
It's a really hard question because there's so many good tips. It's like being a kid in a candy shop trying to choose which one to focus on. But I really like what Shelley Walsh said actually about focusing on what visitors do when they're on your site. And she talks all about mapping out the content experience and having, really thought through. I like the term that she used of experience, and how you need to think when people land on your site, what happens, where do they go, where do you want them to go, and map that out and have really clear calls to action as well, which is something that I think people sometimes forget. So that was something that really stood out to me from Shelley Walsh.
So the experience, yeah, she's full of lots of great tips, certainly to do with content as well. And I love how Shelley's not afraid just to come up with her ideas and suggestions based upon her data, her experience, and it doesn't have to be on trend. It's just something that works now. And certainly, being content marketing, it certainly resonated with you, Amy. Let's take Amy off for a second and bring Phil on there. So I'll close Amy's window there and introduce Phil. Now it said Phil was now Phil was offline now. It said he was live 3 minutes ago. So hopefully Phil is going to be on with us in a second there. If so, we can. He says I'm here. Okay. I don't have the option of adding you for some reason. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We will get. I'm not sure whether I should refresh my screen or not. Whether that's going to completely break anything. I don't think it's me.
You might lose everybody.
It might break someone. Wait, let me rejoin. That's probably a better idea, Phil. So if Phil's going to rejoin, and hopefully we're going to have the option of adding him there. Julia, what tip in part 2 of Marketing Now jumped out at you?
Well, the first one I came across was one which is very dear to my heart, actually, which was from Ben Tepfer, all about surprising and delighting your customers. And I know that's something we talk about a lot in the marketing world. But it just, at that precise moment when I was reading the book, it really struck a chord, because I think it's something that so many businesses at the moment are kind of taking their eye off. They're doing what they've said they're going to do, and that's about it. But very recently I had a lovely experience, and it didn't cost this business anything to do, but I booked a hotel in Nottingham to go to the Marketed Live conference, actually, and to go and see my daughter at the same time. And they'd already said in the description of this hotel room that it was an economy, so the room might not be very big and there might not be much of a view, and that was fine. But I booked the room, and then they came back to me with an email the day afterwards and said, you do realize that you've booked this economy room and you're not going to have much space to move around, etc., etc. And I thought that was brilliant, because they were just reminding me of what I was going to get. So what they'd done in that instance was they'd actually managed my expectations. So they'd made sure that I hadn't booked this room thinking I was going to get some sort of palatial suite, so that I knew actually what I was going to get. When I arrived there, it turned out they'd obviously got some spare bigger rooms, and they'd actually upgraded me free of charge. So I just thought that was such a brilliant example of doing something really simple, putting yourself in your customer's shoes, making sure that they knew what to expect, and then going the extra step. Brilliant.
Great thoughts, and something I'm sure that can be applied to many different industries as well. As long as if you're keeping expectations in check, then customers are less likely to complain or be upset if something happens to them, and they're much more forgiving as well.
Absolutely. I think so often in marketing we can err slightly on the side of setting expectations maybe just a little too high, whereas if we actually put ourselves in our customers' shoes and think about what they are wanting to get from it, we can manage it properly.
Lovely. Okay, Phil's joined us without a hitch, so good to have you here, Phil. Thanks for joining us.
What a dramatic entrance. It's just tends to be how it works when I'm around. Thank you for your patience. Look at this colorful background to just like make a splash, you know?
It's absolutely wonderful. And I was wondering if you were still on your South American travels or you'd gone somewhere else.
Well, you're getting some fierce bedhead today, and this is like my jet lag hoodie. So I hope you're okay with it, because I'm in Mexico City at the moment for the rest of December, but I was just in Cairo. It's kind of like pick 2 random places in the world and just go there in a week. So I just got back from Cairo. So, but I'm happy to be here. This book is so good, by the way. Whose idea was this to like compile all these amazing ideas? Was that you, David Bain?
It was indeed, yes. And I would have taken credit for it even if you'd said it was terrible.
No, it was hard to choose. You were asking me to choose a few, and that was like Sophie's choice, okay?
Absolutely. But I'll tell you what I'll do first of all. I will give a little introduction to you, to the audience, and say that Phil Pallen is a keynote speaker, a brand strategist, and a celebrity brand expert. As Phil puts it, if your baby is ugly, it's his job to tell you. You can find him over at philpallen.co. So that's what I would have done had you been on at the beginning there. But I just wanted to add that little bit of an introduction there.
Thank you.
Yeah, Phil, thank you for your kind words. Out of this particular section of the book, part 2, so obviously there's 3 sections in the book. There's about 40 odd different tips in each section. Which one particularly resonated with you?
So I got really excited reading a lot of these because I was like, yes, yes. Felt like church. I was like, amen, yes. But I would say when I reflect on some of the major changes selfishly, personally, that have made a change in my business this year, the one in particular was having to do with keywords, how to find keywords and how to incorporate this into your content strategy. Lucas Zeleny, I might have missed a few consonants there. How do you say it? Zelezny, there we go. I loved how he talked about finding keywords and gave a few tools that I hadn't heard of. But this year, that's been something I know I've always needed to incorporate more, keywords into my content, podcast, not just blogs, but LinkedIn lives and podcasts and all this kind of thing. But in doing this, it's made a huge difference in my discoverability online. For years, I just kind of, people would find me through word of mouth, through examples of the work that I was doing or in footers on websites. And just a few days ago, someone went through my sequence and signed up for an intro call. And when I said, how did you find me? They said, I Googled best personal branding experts.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's what I did without him seeing that. But all of you got to see the face.
Absolutely,
So,
yes.
I love
that.
that.
That's outstanding. And one question actually I had for you was: did you not go by the domain name philpallen.expert and then move to .co?
Yeah. So last year I separated out my branding agency and my speaking career. I found that when I would approach a conference to speak, they were asking me to be a sponsor or to speak for free. And I'm like, no, honey, that's not how this works. For me and my approach to speaking is very much like, I'd rather not sell something and I'd rather you pay me to give really good information. So for me, it felt like separating out the two was the right thing to do at the time. But then in realizing that, I kind of created too many things. And I had a blog on one and the podcast on the other. And I was like, why have I not taken my own advice? Like, why have I, right? Can we not relate to that? It's like, we're so quick to give everyone else advice. And then when it comes to our own stuff, it's like, wait, why have I done that? So I merged them back because the nature of what I do, personal branding, kind of makes sense for me to have a personal brand, And so I merged them back under .co, and .expert is now just a forwarder back there.
Got you. The reason I ask actually is because I've had a nightmare over the last few years with wondering which website to focus in on, and I've had lots of different brands as well. And one of the reasons I guess I've had that challenge is I haven't been able to get my hands on davidbain.com until recently. So 2 months ago, I managed to get my hands on that. So I'm going to be in the process of just focusing in on that domain name and getting any content that I want to publish on there. And I think it's great advice, certainly from a personal brand perspective, to do that. So I was just interested in your backstory.
That's an exciting win that you've got that domain. And guess what? The good news is you're going to have your name forever. So it's actually really smart brand equity to be building every day. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Every day, if you can just add some other element to that, the good news is like you might, you're not going to get crazy in 10 years and decide that, maybe you will, David Bain. You're a little crazy. I don't know. You might change your name completely. Chances are you're not going to. So it makes sense to build that brand equity, and things like marketing now would become a sub brand. One of the delicious things that you've created as part of this tree, with multiple roots. So you've got your branding, your sub brands. It's great.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm glad you appreciate that. That's the intention behind it. So wonderful. So unfortunately, Steve, there's not enough time for you. So no, only joking. Steve, thanks again for coming on. So in part 2 of the book, what's your biggest? What's the tips that resonated most with you?
So I think the kind of the main one really was from Andrew and Pete. So it's kind of like spend 90% of your marketing efforts doing one thing remarkably well. And that kind of comes from working. in kind of small teams, where you don't really have kind of a lot of budget or a lot of people power to do things. And even when you're in big teams, just because you have a bit more flexibility, it's always good to kind of concentrate on one area or a handful of areas and do it kind of really well, rather than just trying to spread yourself too thinly and kind of do it really badly. I think I found a stat saying 65% of marketers find it a challenge to create engaging content. So you're not going to do that any better if the content is of poor standards. You're not going to help yourself. So yeah, I think the idea really is just kind of concentrate on what you're really good at, aim to hit your goals that way, work smarter. You're not trying to work harder. And if someone says you should do a podcast or you should have an Instagram channel, don't just do it because they say you do it because it makes sense for you, because otherwise it's kind of a vanity project. And if it's not your business, or it's you've got kind of bosses above you, you're going to have some awkward questions when kind of goals aren't being hit. So everything needs to have a good solid business case and kind of a marketing plan to go with it.
So Steve, what about if it's the other way around, and you're working in a business and the big boss comes in and says, why aren't we on this channel? Why aren't we doing this? And they see it as not taking advantage of certain opportunities if you're not focusing on certain channels.
Well, I suppose that's where the kind of the business case kind of planning comes into it, So certainly if an idea is put to you, certainly from above, you kind of have to look into it. But you need to kind of take a look at the real inside out of that project and work out if it's worthwhile doing. And if it is, go ahead and do it. Maybe it'll be a little bit of extra budget, maybe some new people joining the team. But certainly at the same time, it's that power of saying no is an amazing thing. I've been in some situations before where you have some strong characters who, don't really take no for an answer, but that never goes well. It kind of always backfires on you. So it's actually being able to just be strict and being honest with yourself as a business, as a marketer and as a team, see what you can get out of things. Again, don't spread yourself too thinly. Just do what you do really well and kind of try to do the best from that.
Yeah, great advice, and be able to articulate the reasons why, from a business case perspective as well as possible.
Positives and negatives.
Positives and negatives. So I'm going to kick you off here, Steve, just for a second, just so we can get Amy back in. So we'll get you back in just in a second here, but it'd be great to get Amy's thoughts on that one here as well, because I know that Amy's got a hard cut off in about 10 minutes time or so here as well. So hopefully we can get Amy's thoughts on that, because obviously Amy's highly involved in content repurposing as well. And Amy, Andrew and Pete's tip there was to focus 90% of your time on doing just one thing and 10% of your time on experimenting. How does that marry with kind of content repurposing? How do you make sure that you don't spend too much of your time doing content repurposing?
Well, I think it all comes down to how much time you spend on creating content, and to know that if you're creating repurposed content, it's still creating content. It's just, a different type of content. So I always say that you need to look at how much time you have on content overall and then spread that time wisely. So content repurposing, my advice is usually to spend kind of 20 to 30% of your time on the core content, your core long form content. So your podcast or your blog, your video, your weekly live stream, whatever it is, and then spend the rest, like 70, 80% of the time repurposing and promoting that piece of content. So it's really kind of in alignment with Andrew and Pete in terms of what they say, go all in on being brilliant at one type of content and then look at ways to repurpose. But to your question before about when you said, what about if you are getting pressure to be in certain places and you're not there, and should you be doing that? I think it all comes down to, again, how much time you have. And it's all well and good going and venturing into unexplored waters and going onto a platform that you've never been before. But you can't just copy and paste content that worked in one place, slap it over somewhere else and expect it to work. So you're going to have to understand that platform understand what's working, do your research, find out why people are there and what they expect to see, and then tailor that content and that message for that platform. So then it's, should we put all of our time, or the time that we have into growing the existing audience we've worked really hard for on this channel that's working for us? Or should we take some time away from that to start from scratch somewhere else and maybe go in for a long game over there? So it's spreading the time. And if you got the budget to just get more resources in and go, and they can go off and explore the other channel whilst you still go all in on where you are, that's fine. But if you don't have budget and you have limited resources, do you start from scratch and build up, and that'll take time? Or do you...
I just see Amy paused there. Do you see that as well, Phil?
to work on each platform?
Okay, I'm sorry, we lost you there for a second, Amy, but I love what you're saying there as well. And in fact, I love the clever way that you go about creating content that can be repurposed very easily. I think making it easy for yourself is important as well. So I'm hearing a little bit of an echo now as well, but hopefully that'll resolve itself. What I've noticed you doing things like is creating 16:9 videos and having captions / subtitles on there as well, but doing it so that you can crop the video in a one-on-one format, but also have the captions still available then right in the center of the screen. So you're not making life difficult for yourself by having to do the captions twice. So I think you learn from people who actually walk the walk, and you're walking the walk very effectively there. Amy, while we've still got you here, we've got you for another 5 minutes, I think. What's your other tip that resonated with you from part 2 of the book?
Well, I really liked what Dan Knowlton said about auditing your content and looking at how much content you have that is attracting people and raising awareness, how much content is convincing people, and how much content is then converting people. So actually doing an audit and working out what percentage of each piece of content do you have, and working out whether you are actually neglecting, so you don't have enough of the pyramid. So is all of your content attracting people, but then you don't have anything convincing people? Oh, have I gone? I disappeared? No, I'm still there. So I really like that, an audit, but based on that, on convince, convert, attract, and making sure that, I think probably the missing piece for many people is too much attracting people and bringing them in, but then not enough content that would start to move them along, of addressing the objections that would come up when they already start to trust you through those awareness pieces of content. And then they start to have questions, FAQs, things like that. So the content that then moves them to convince and then convert. So I thought that was a really great tip from Dan Knowlton that I really took on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could have a long discussion about that and how best to structure your digital marketing activities based upon what framework you have at the center of your approach, and that's essentially a customer journey that's at the center of your content that you produce, and then obviously you'll have your digital marketing channels that would map onto that content after that as well. So is there anything in particular about what he said that has made you question what you're currently doing or change what you intend to do over the coming year?
Yeah, I think I certainly will conduct that audit myself, and probably it personally with Content 10X, we probably don't have enough on the convert side. There's a lot of awareness, a lot of value add, a lot of help, that kind of thing. But when people are wanting to then work with us, we don't have a lot of actually, what it is to work with us, objections to work with us, and how we can overcome those. So I'll certainly be undertaking an audit ourselves, but also with our clients as well, when we're helping to map out strategically how they'll plan their content. It's just a really great approach, I think, just looking at the percentages of the content and where we should start going a bit more all in on. So that kind of audit, I think, is something that we'll start to implement with the clients as well.
Great stuff. And you certainly demonstrated there the value in doing that, because as content marketers, I think you're naturally driven towards producing the type of content that you think is going to be best. And unless you're actually following the path of the customer and doing that audit and determining where the missing elements are, then potentially you're going to be missing something.
Yeah, and
So,
I think there's a lot of people out there in the content marketing world who just say add value, add value, add value. Don't think about sales. Just give, and one day a sale will happen. And you know, like, it's all well and good value, but you do need to, if you have a business, have more than just a strategy of adding value all the time. You need to think about what actually happens when they're happy with what they've seen and they want to work with you. And you shouldn't feel slimy about sales and convincing and converting people to work with you, because if your strategy is just to add value all the time, then there's not much of a revenue generating aspect to that if it's just free valuable content all the time. So you're not going to be too happy with your business growth if you don't have anything other than free content.
lovely. And Rhonda's saying in the chat, thanks, Amy. Great way to quantify content. Amy, we just lost your video there, but we can certainly still hear you. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you, just before you go, would you like to leave the viewers with your website or anywhere else that they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can just head on over to content10x.com, and that's where you can find out a bit more about what we do and links to all social media platforms as well.
Superb stuff. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. Bye.
Now, we will get Steve back on if I can find him. So invite him back on the screen. I'm not very good at asking a question and getting Steve back on at the same time. So that's why I just had to verbalize that. Hello again, Steve.
They're back.
Now, who should we go back to now? How about Phil? Phil, shall we go to a different point here? Is there another tip that you can possibly bring up that resonated with you?
Yeah, and I think it fits with what Amy was saying, who I love, by the way. I love Amy Woods. Can't get enough of her. I like the point from Zach Johnson, who said, keep on promoting your best content. Sometimes we forget to do that. I think we as like creators and experts or whatever we are, we focus so much on the creation of it. And then it's like we falsely assume that by putting it out once or twice, maybe on 2 different platforms, that everyone's going to see it, which is just not the case. Content is now an unlimited resource, right? Like creating it is not enough. We're all chasing people's time and attention. And it doesn't, and this is going to vibe with all my British people here, okay, that are often too afraid to talk about themselves or too polite to, be selling too much. I don't have that problem. I like to add I'm Canadian, not American, so I'm better. However, I've lived in America, so it's had its way with me. Right. Keep, promoting your best content. Like, don't be afraid to post it again. Don't assume that just because you've posted it once, people have seen it. It's still this idea of like bringing in the analytics, the analysis to what you're creating. It's so much more than just creating it. Like actually take time to look at what's performing best. I like this little reminder because I'm like guilty as charged of posting it once or twice and assuming people saw it because I posted it, but a little nudge that when you put the effort into creating something great, post it again, right? Even if people have seen it before, they might like to see it again. So I like that point.
Yeah, in relation to that, I also like the tip by Jimmy Daly saying focus on building a library of content, not building an audience. And if you do that, then you're actually focusing on your content as a long-term resource. I think too many people publish blog posts that are incredible and very lengthy blog posts and that can be useful for many years to come. But because they're perceived as being a blog post that's timely and only relevant possibly for a few months after it's been published, then people don't go back to it. So a library of content, utterly essential. Both of you, Julia, Steve, agreeing with that one there as well. Julia, is that something that you tend to practice? Do you publish content in a structured way so that people can appreciate it and use it over the long term?
I wish I could say yes. No, I do. I do sometimes go and create little videos. When I create a blog, I do sometimes go and hop onto Lumen 5 and create a little video to go and promote it with. And then I give myself a big high five because I've actually done the promotion bit. But yeah, then a month down the line, I guess, to be honest, I sometimes get a little bit bored of it, and I kind of think, well, probably everyone else out there is a little bit bored with it as well, so I should probably shut up about it now and get on and do something else. But actually, as you so rightly pointed out, the chances are that the other people out there don't even know it exists yet. And
I think Phil was wanting to give you a telling off.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Promote yourself more. Don't be so scared. Don't be so British.
There are some good things to being British, but I'm not sure quite what
There's
they are
lots
at the
of
minute.
good things. Yeah, there's lots of good things. This is why I work a lot in the UK, because everyone's too afraid to talk about themselves. So
So you give us a push. Yeah, but there is. Doesn't anyone else find that like you create a live stream, or you put your heart and soul into creating a blog, and kind of when you've done it, you've said it. So you've almost kind of lost interest in it yourself, but you've got to kind of push through that barrier to actually get it out there and promote it.
It depends on what the stats are saying as well, because if you've got people coming to the site, you know, I've had blogs which bored the hell out of me after a few months, but they kind of generate the majority of traffic and leads and all that side of things as well. So, and as long as the analytics and accountants are happy, don't worry about it. Just keep repurposing as much as what you can do. I mean, update content, definitely. You know, if it's old and stale, fair enough, it's going to, it'll fall back down. But you kind of keep it fresh and pertinent. It kind of makes a big difference, and it saves you having to write something new from scratch.
From scratch, exactly. Yeah. I did that last week.
Natasha's saying in the chat, I love the different perspectives of the panel. So make sure you disagree with each other more. That would be good. but I think it's a couple of different things. You know, definitely there's a British thing and a thing from other people around the world, but perhaps not being willing or wanting to promote the same piece of content loads and loads and loads. But you also, as a content marketer, lose interest, as you're saying, Steve, and want to move on to the next bright and shiny thing. Do you think that the only way around that is just to be honing in on your data and seeing what's popular and actually encouraging yourself to focus in on something that's commercially valuable?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, it's like what I was saying about doing Instagram. It becomes a vanity project if you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. If you've got your analytics going in the right place and it is kind of generating leads or generating new customers, then you know it's working. The fact you're bored with it just means you're close to it, and other people have seen it for the first time, even though it might be 2 years old. As long as it's still up to date and kind of relevant and optimized, it just means it's doing the job properly. So. I had kind of one role where the director kind of wanted to change the homepage every month just because he thought you should do that. But I managed to convince him, though, it's not kind of how you should do things. But
how did you convince him?
Showed him analytics. So thankfully it wasn't a difficult conversation, but his logical mind was, it's a new month, we need a new homepage.
Well, it's easy for people that view their own website every single day to get bored with it, and it's difficult for them to see things from a customer's perspective sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a quote from Seth Godin where he talks about this man who's been doing guitar lessons in New York for the last 30 years, and he's got the same poster. It hasn't changed in 30 years because it still works. That's kind of the way you should look at it. As long as the analytics are going the right way, keep it.
Shall
we go back to Julia? Julia, do you want to select another tip from part 2 of the book?
Yes, I would. Am I allowed to select Phil's tip? Because I just thought,
ooh,
whoa, it just resonated with me so much. I know, teacher's pet and all that, but it was all about valuing your customers and your consumers and your visitors' time. And I particularly love the bit where you said basically cut everything that you write in half. I just thought that was utterly brilliant. And I've written a post to myself and endless social media posts about this, about the fact that somebody's attention and their time isn't a right. It's not something that is just there for you to grab and make the most of. It's actually them giving you a gift. So if we're going out there and creating something, if they're giving us their attention, that's something that they can't actually get back, that 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 30 seconds or whatever it is of that attention. So we need to be making sure that we're actually giving them something in return that's of value. And I think so many businesses forget that. And they're just out there putting out
You
quite-
say it better than I do. I think that you should just
Oh.
adopt that. I like how you say it.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Can you just come around wherever I am? Let's just go as a duo.
I'd
I
love
love
to
it.
do that. I'd love to do that.
Do you know where I learned that and why I reflect on it? Actually, it was working with celebrities. The first 8 years of my career were in LA, working on TV shows and with people who had big egos and busy schedules. And every time I learned the hard way, don't waste their time. But then I thought, actually, it's not just people that are big and fancy, but it's like, it's everyone that we need to respect. So I learned that I would type out an email and then I'd go, well, actually, how you said earlier, put yourself in the other person's shoes and our customers or our clients' shoes and think, how can I make this better? And I realized, shorten the message. I shouldn't assume that they have all the time in the world. So whether it's an email or a text message in the middle of the night, it's like, I communicate in a very intentional way. I don't send pictures of me on a camel in Egypt unless it's warranted. Unless it's the right thing. So I try to shorten everything into half. And now when I have contractors that don't do that, it makes me really crazy. I'm like, this big, long paragraph written, I. If someone has an email with I more than 5 times and they're not a client, then I ignore it.
Yes.
Dixon wants the
absolutely.
camel shot in the chat. Yeah.
I've got it. It's around here somewhere.
How do you know when it's appropriate to be sharing kind of personal, fun stuff on social media and when it's not?
I think it's usually more appropriate than not. And here's what I mean by that. I think that we fall into the habit of sharing brand-related messaging because it's safe and it's what we think we're supposed to do. But I actually think that people are going to connect with you more on content material that's not on brand because it humanizes you. I've been thinking, I love that you asked this question. I've been thinking a lot about this. My most successful Instagram stories, for example, have nothing to do with branding. And how do we measure success? I mean, are they converting to clients? I don't know. But am I staying top of mind to a lot of people? Yes. And that's how I'm measuring success. Last night, yesterday was my birthday and I turned 31 and I posted 31 things I'm grateful for. And some of them were funny, like Botox, sunsets, all kinds of things. I just came up with all kinds of crazy. I had one photo of me with like a really bad haircut and I said haircuts. And I woke up to 150 replies in my inbox on Instagram, which I've never had before. And I got to tell you, some of them I was like, this is not appropriate. A client who's hiring me and paying me thousands of dollars, this is not what I should be showing them. But actually, because I was human and I was myself, people know what they're getting. They know me. It usually works better. So I think in those moments of doubt, when you're like, is this appropriate? Is it not? Chances are you should just jump off the diving board and dive in with the big cannonball. People are going to respond well to it.
Is it appropriate to do that or share those types of posts on other networks, or isn't Instagram really the place to do that sort of stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's how you use it. And I think to your point, you've thought about, how do I use this platform? What's the kind of content that I'm serving on this platform to resonate with the audience that's there? Would I go and put that on LinkedIn? Probably not. To your point, I probably wouldn't, where I'm keeping that a little more professional. So I think I would say I won't answer that question for anyone because I'm not your brand. But I would say assign each social media platform a purpose based on the audience you've got there and make a decision accordingly, regardless of social media platform. Balance what you share with on-brand content and not on-brand content that humanizes you, which is a huge part of why people work with you, give you time, give you their attention span, is because they like you, regardless of how good you are and how much you know. People like people, Who do you want to spend time with? Those are the people you work with.
One of the reasons I ask is I've never really fully embraced Instagram. For whatever reason, I've never loved using that platform. And I'm wondering whether or not it's a mistake and I'm missing out on a lot of potential by not using it, or perhaps there's something that I can do on LinkedIn? I mean, at the moment, I'm live streaming quite a lot, and I'm quite comfortable being silly sometimes on live streaming, adding in comments and interacting with people that way. And that's a way of personalizing your relationship with your target audience. Is that enough, do you think?
I think that there's only so many hours in the day. And so, I think that, this fits with the theme of what we're talking about, which is limited number of hours, unlimited number of possibilities.
Nicely
think
brought
about
back.
how it fits into think about how it fits into your schedule, and don't be too tempted to just go there based on other people's successes. I'll be honest, I feel really good about Instagram. I don't feel as good about LinkedIn. I kind of have the opposite problem where I'm like, I have to keep it a little more professional over here. That's a little challenging for me to do, if you haven't noticed, And so, but at the same time, it's like, I have to focus a little more on what's working right and to do more of what's working right than to really just focus on what I'm not doing as well yet. And then at some point to do my work, at some point to do my work that pays my bills. And, so it's just, it's a juggling act, I would say. And so I'm not even going to answer that question for you, but I think when you know how long you can spend on social media, and you know where your audience is, and you know where you're strongest, let all of those elements weigh on the decision.
Great. That's a lot to think about there. Is there anyone watching live that has an opinion about this? Are you struggling with a particular social network? Do you feel that you should be using it, but you're not using it? Do you feel that you're not putting your personal brand out there enough? It would be good to hear your opinion as well. Let's maybe try and get one more tip in, either from Steve or Julie. I can't remember if you've had two each, or if one of you's just shared one tip. Would you like to put your hand up if you'd like to? Here goes Steve.
I've just had one, but it kind of, to be honest,
I've
it
done
leads
two,
in.
but I don't think Steve has.
No, but this kind of leads in with what we're just saying, to be honest, and it's about kind of sharing your own personality in your content. Although, like, ego does want me to talk about my own readability point, but I won't do that one. But yeah, so personality. I mentioned it. Yeah, just kind of dropped it in there. But yeah, personality is a funny one because I've kind of gone down the line of being too professional on certain occasions, and when you read it back yourself, you're kind of boring yourself. So if you can't even make yourself interested in it, you have to think you're not doing something right. And I've kind of worked a lot in the kind of the SaaS sector over the last few years. And as much as you've got a really nice app with kind of cool reports and dashboards, that's kind of not really enough to kind of sell. People still want to buy from people, and they want to know the story behind the platform. So kind of getting involved with things like talking about the passion of the founder, why they kind of did it in the first place, I think is a really good way to do it. And then also, the coders who work in the platform, what is it they love to do as part of the job? It doesn't necessarily need to be actually selling the product, but by just sharing people's passions, you kind of share the reasons why they kind of want to be, joining that SaaS platform. It's kind of get away from that falling into the me trap. Some people like to talk about all the wars they've won, which is good to do. But again, if it's all about, look at us, it's not about the customer journey. If you're talking about awards as well as saying to the customers, this is why you should be on board with us, then it's kind of okay. But yeah, it's bring your personality into it without having to make it, again, a vanity contest.
Steve, you also talked about involving the audience as well. How do you go about doing that? How do you talk about the things that are highly likely to be of importance to them?
Well, again, it's just about trying to find out what people's pain points are, really, and kind of making sure that you're answering problems. You're not just talking about, this is the latest widget that we have in the platform. It's more, this is what the widget will do to make your life easier, and kind of bring it back that way. And the only way really to get that is from speaking with your customers and kind of getting to come on board and talking to you, talking at your events, doing things like webinars, so you kind of turn them into ambassadors. And they're kind of selling the product for you instead of you kind of having to do that. People, again, like to hear from the horse's mouth, and yeah, people buy from people more so if that person just happens to be a customer who's got the only thing benefit to them is the fact that they're sharing their experience.
Julia, do you have to do that face to face, or Can those relationships be built virtually via social media?
Oh, they can absolutely be built by social media. I mean, most of the people that I work with, I've met on social, and very often we work virtually as well by Zoom or something like that. So until maybe we hop on that call, I might never have actually spoken to them live, as it were. So you can most definitely build those relationships over social. That's what it's there for, meeting new people and engaging and seeing those little personal things and responding. Like, there are some people on Twitter who divide all their Twitter up into Twitter lists, and that's absolutely brilliant. And you can be like mega strategic if you've got your Twitter list, but isn't it fun just to jump over and have a look at like what everybody else that you follow is sharing, and just jump in and join some conversations, and you can meet some amazing people, and you don't know from that what those opportunities are going to turn into. And that's, you know, that's the fun side of social as well. Let's not forget that.
I don't think anyone would disagree with the ROI of consistently showing up. I can't sit here and predict directly that 4 tweets a day are going to lead to X number of clients per month. That's dumb.
Absolutely.
But actually just showing up and trying to be organized using all of these tips we've talked about. Amy has amazing tips on repurposing content to like manage this, because it's a lot of responsibility, but no one would argue with the ROI of actually showing up and being consistent. I mean, I've been on 3 live streams today, and I got an email that came in 5 minutes ago inquiring about my services. I don't know where it came from. I should probably ask. But when we show up, when we show up and make ourselves accessible on this powerful tool that is the internet, good things happen, you know?
Absolutely, all the time. And that was the thing that I was going to say. If we scroll back a few minutes when we were talking about repurposing and maybe creating content to put out there on all these different platforms, actually, if you're not going to actively be there and engage at the same time, then is it actually doing very much for you? Because we all know that the engagement side is the really important piece, not only for building those relationships, but also for the algorithms. Like, if you don't go out there and engage, the algorithms ain't going to come out to play either. So, it's absolutely vital that we're there in real time, being human.
A lot of incredible discussion going on here. I kind of don't even want to jump in when that happens, but we've got about 7 or so minutes left for this particular session. Is there any other one tip from this part of the book that resonated with anyone particularly, and we haven't covered it? I know I asked you for... asked you for a couple of tips beforehand, so you've probably highlighted a couple of tips, and we've covered a couple of tips. So I just thought I'd try and catch you out with that one.
I've got more. I've got the one from David Meerman Scott about, which is allied to what we were just talking about, not scheduling everything and actually allowing room for real-time marketing. So you can go and respond to something that's happening in the news. You can share your opinion on it, or if there's a lovely, juicy, trending topic and it's related to your brand or your personality, then you can jump in and potentially reach a whole lot more people by actually talking about it. Absolutely brilliant. It's something that innocent drinks, smoothies, etc., do really, really well. So, for example, when Bake Off is on, they'll have their social media person sat there and tweeting off about Bake Off, because they know that a shed load of people that buy their products are also watching Bake Off at the same time. It's brands being human. Brilliant.
Yep. I also I'm to the point now where if I see a post on Facebook, particularly Facebook, where I can see how it was posted, but if I see that it was posted from Meet Edgar, I don't really believe that person is showing up right now to ask that question. Yeah. I'm not saying don't use it, but I'm saying that I think we're getting savvier. And those things start to register in our subconscious of, that person scheduled that 6 weeks ago. Am I really going to spend my valuable minutes answering that right now? Yeah. Whereas when someone chimes in with something that has to do with what's happening today, there's all this talk about fast advertising now. When something happens in real life, how can we quickly respond with a response to the Peloton ad that has everyone up in arms because she was already skinny? Fat. I don't know. Again, it all points, Julie, to your point, it all points to being human. It's like if we're all sitting in a room right now having a chat, like we'd be talking about it, and it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing, just online.
Totally.
And you don't even have to be on social to take advantage of reacting quickly to something. KFC in this country had a big challenge with the supply of chicken to their shops, and I believe about 90% of them were closed because they didn't have enough chicken to be able to supply their restaurants. And the day after, they had an ad in the newspaper that instead of saying KFC, said FCK. And that got shared a lot on social media, and it was an apology from them as well. It was a brave thing to do from a brand perspective, but it seemed to work very, very well indeed. And you can take advantage of social media by doing things like that as well. It doesn't have to be directly on social, I guess, is what I'm saying. You were concerned with that reaction, Phil. Were you thinking it wasn't the right thing to be doing?
No, I love it. That's like, that's the kind of thing that thrills me, especially in England. That's brave. I love that. It's bold and it makes us laugh, but actually don't think that that's not going to have an impression when someone walks past the store that is finally open. I don't know. I mean, I think it's really smart. I think, I don't know. I like when brands take risks like that, when they use swear words, when they, when they're human. I just like it. I just like it. It's fun.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining me in this session. A lot of fun, a lot of great insight shared, and thanks for sharing the tips and highlighting the tips that you did. Let's just share the viewers a little bit more about yourselves and make sure they know where to find you. Julia, can you just highlight where anyone can find you online?
Yes, it would be lovely to chat with you on the socials. I am at Julia Bramble pretty much everywhere, so please come and find me. And my website, if you want to check it out, has just been redone. The paint is still drying as we speak. It's bramblebuzz.co.uk.
Wonderful stuff. Thanks again for coming on, Julia.
Thank you.
And Steve, where can people find you online?
Yeah, well, you can find me in my personal one at Steve Linney. With work, it's at Informer HQ, and essentially we're a cybersecurity app where some interesting things are coming in the new year, but I can't really mention anything more just yet. But yeah, so check me out there. That'd be great to hear from you.
Lovely stuff. Thanks, Steve. And Phil, I'm sure after being on here for the past hour or so, you're going to have a barrel load of emails all requesting more about your services and what you do. Where can people find about you online, sir?
I mean, that would be great. If that's what happens, then I'm going to send you something pretty, mister. I'm philpallen.co is my website. We have a podcast called Brand Therapy where we, tackle real life branding challenges in a lot of different industries and work through them. I go live on LinkedIn like once every week, or if I'm irresponsible that week, maybe I skip a week, but I try to go live weekly. Instagram at Phil Pallen. And then I guess I just thought of something random. I just did a keynote in Cairo this weekend. And if people want the notes from that, where I give 5 branding tips for 2020, it's philpallen.co/rise, RISE. You can go and get that little workbook that I created. I've loved this. And also, thank you for putting this book together. Like that was such a good idea, and I really loved reading it. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for saying that. And I'm glad you did. I'm in the process of recording the audiobook version as well, and that's taken slightly longer than I intended, but that should be out in the next couple of weeks or so as well. So I'm looking forward to getting all versions published before Christmas.
It's great. I love it.
Wow.
Superb. Well, thanks again. I'm going to head off to the green room for the next section. Just to give you the heads up, if you don't leave immediately, you'll still be live in front of the audience. That's the way that Crowdcasts work. So feel free to keep on chatting or head off now. Please bear with me, dear audience member. I'll be back in about 2 or 3 minutes or so. So just hang on exactly where you are, and we'll be back in a second. Thanks again.